Stop the trial. The shout cracked through the courtroom like a gunshot. Papers froze midair. Reporters went silent. Even the gavel paused halfway down. Judge Palmer squinted toward the back row of the D.C. Superior Court. Cameras swung in the same direction, lenses focusing on the voice that didn't belong there. A woman stood beside a cleaning cart, her hands gripping the handle of a mop like it was a weapon. Her uniform, navy blue, name tag smudged with bleach, made her look invisible, but her eyes burned with something the whole room could feel. "I said stop this trial," she repeated, her southern drawl cutting through the marble echo. "If no one else will defend him, I will." The air thickened. Laughter rippled from the gallery, half shock, half mockery. A maid defending a millionaire? In downtown Washington? It sounded like madness. Welcome back to Whisper Realm. If you're looking forward to what will happen next, hit the like button, tell me in the comments section how you're feeling today, subscribe to get more of our videos. Now let's continue. At the defense table, William Morrison lifted his head for the first time all morning. His once famous composure gone. His lawyers had walked out 15 minutes earlier, leaving him alone to drown under the weight of federal charges and flashing cameras. He blinked at the woman he'd seen 100 times pushing that same cart through the marble corridors of his company's offices, and for the first time he saw her. Judge Palmer cleared his throat. "Miss, who exactly are you?" "Bella Jackson," she said, standing taller. "Maintenance staff, Morrison Tower." A reporter whispered, "This'll go viral in minutes." Maybe it already had, because somewhere in that grand, suffocating courtroom, between privilege and poverty, guilt and grace, a maid had crossed an invisible line. And while the world watched in disbelief, the question hung in the air like judgment itself. Who gets to speak for justice, the powerful or the brave? Who gets to speak for justice, the powerful or the brave? 15 years earlier, Bella Jackson stood beneath the gray stone arch of Harvard Law School, clutching a stack of papers that would change her life and end it. She was 23, the first in her family to make it out of Atlanta's South Side. Brilliant, determined, loud when it counted. Professors whispered that she had the instincts of a Supreme Court litigator. But all it took was one accusation to tear it all apart. Her classmate, Rachel Whitmore, the daughter of a federal judge, claimed Bella had stolen her legal brief draft. No one asked Bella's side. Within a week, a disciplinary letter appeared, followed by suspension, then silence. When she tried to appeal, the dean looked her straight in the eye and said, "It's best if you just go quietly." So she did. The news spread faster than she could pack. Friends disappeared. Recruiters stopped calling. Her dream of defending the voiceless died before it ever began. Years later, the only work she could find was cleaning. First at office buildings, then hotels, and finally at Morrison Tower. Polishing marble floors she once imagined herself walking across in heels and confidence. And the man who owned that tower, William Morrison, had no idea he'd once saved her. His charitable foundation had funded the free legal aid clinic that kept Bella from sleeping on the streets after her expulsion. Each time she passed his office, she whispered the same vow under her breath. "I owe him more than he'll ever know." The judge's gavel struck once, echoing off the marble walls like a warning. Due to unforeseen circumstances, counsel for the defense has withdrawn from this case, Judge Palmer announced. Effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the D.C. Superior Court. Reporters scrambled to tweet it before anyone else. Morrison sat frozen, his jaw tight, his lawyer's empty seats beside him a silent indictment. In the back, Bella caught fragments of whispers. "Strickland and Avery doesn't walk out without a reason. Word is they were bought out." By who? Same people backing the prosecution. Her pulse quickened. Bought out. The phrase hit like a match to dry paper. When the courtroom cleared for recess, Morrison sat slumped over a pile of folders. Bella approached quietly, setting aside her cleaning gloves. "Sir," she said, "you can't face them alone. Let me help." He looked up, tired, hollow. "They're saying I embezzled $20 million from a clean energy grant. But the truth is, I found out my partner was cutting side deals with oil companies. The moment I spoke up, the audit found me guilty." Bella sifted through the papers. Dates didn't align. numbers duplicated, evidence that felt too perfect to be real. "This isn't sloppy accounting," she murmured. "It's engineered." Judge Palmer's voice cut through from the bench. Trial adjourned for 24 hours. Defense must secure new counsel. 24 hours. One night. That night, under the flickering lights of the courthouse law library, Bella Jackson sat surrounded by open books, her fingers brushing over pages she hadn't touched since Harvard. The smell of paper and ink felt like oxygen. As dawn crept through the window, she whispered the words that once defined her dream. "Objection, Your Honor." Knowledge, once buried, was rising again. The next morning, DC woke up to headlines about the maid who challenged a judge. But Bella Jackson didn't care about the noise. She cared about what she'd found. Sitting at a metal table in the courthouse cafeteria, she spread Morrison's financial reports beside her coffee. Her eyes scanned the lines until something clicked. 3 separate wire transfers signed not by Morrison, but by Charles Denham, his longtime business partner. She typed the name into an old courthouse computer. Within minutes, the screen filled with lobby records and campaign donations. Denham Industries, listed as a consultant for multiple oil companies, had poured hundreds of thousands into political campaigns fighting renewable energy reform. Her stomach turned. Morrison's clean energy project hadn't just threatened Denham's wallet. It threatened an entire network of power. Then another detail stopped her cold. An archived Washington Post article from 5 years ago showed Denham's law firm had donated nearly $1 million to Strickland and Avery, the same firm that had just walked out on Morrison's defense. Her pen slipped from her fingers. This wasn't incompetence. This was sabotage, polished, funded, and perfectly executed. That night, while cleaning the marble floors of Morrison Tower, Bella scribbled notes on napkins from the staff lounge. Defense angles, inconsistencies, points to challenge. Between vacuum hums and elevator dings, she built a case no one expected from a maid. When Morrison came down late, still in his rumpled suit, he found her hunched over the cart, surrounded by coffee-stained napkins covered in handwriting. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes," Bella replied, not looking up. "I do," because she finally understood. The trial wasn't about numbers. It was about power, and the truth buried under its weight. The first message came at midnight. Bella was sitting at her kitchen table in her tiny southeast DC apartment, surrounded by folders and half-drunk coffee, when her phone buzzed. No name, no number, just 6 words, glowing across the cracked screen. "Drop the case, maid, or disappear." Her breath caught. She looked toward the window, streetlights flickering against the rain-streaked glass, the city humming below. She deleted the text, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The next day, she returned home to find her door cracked open, drawers yanked out, files scattered like confetti. The one folder she'd hidden under a mattress, the one with Denham's donations and law firm receipts, was gone. Nothing else was touched. She called Morrison. Within an hour, his black SUV pulled up outside her building. He stepped out looking shaken. "You can't stay here, Bella. I'll have security bring you to my guest house tonight." But Bella shook her head. "If I hide, they've already won." He stared at her, torn between fear and admiration. "You realize they could come back?" "I do," she said quietly, locking eyes with him. "But I'm not the one who should be afraid." That night, she sat on her couch, apartment still in shambles, the faint hum of sirens echoing through the walls. She spread what little evidence she had left across the coffee table, whispering her argument into the dark. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury." The words were barely audible, but they steadied her heart. Outside, somewhere unseen, a car idled for too long before driving away. Bella didn't sleep. She couldn't, but she wasn't broken. Because bravery, she reminded herself, isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to fight while you're still shaking. By the next afternoon, the courthouse buzz had shifted from disbelief to obsession. Reporters swarmed the steps, calling Bella the maid of justice. But inside Morrison Tower, the air felt heavier, like the calm before a storm. That's where Lydia Chun found her. The assistant looked pale, her designer blazer wrinkled, eyes red from crying. She shut the office door behind her and whispered, "I need to tell you something before it's too late. Bella set down the file she'd been sorting. Go on. Lydia's voice trembled. It was me. I leaked the files to Charles Denham. He threatened me. Said if I didn't, he'd ruin my brother. He's diabetic. The hospital bills are crushing us. I thought I could control it. Bella's jaw tightened, anger and pity warring inside her. And now, I can't live with it anymore. Lydia reached in her purse and pulled out a sleek black tablet. This has everything: emails, payment logs, wire transfers. Proof that Denham paid Strickland and Avery to abandon Mr. Morrison. Bella hesitated, then took it. If this is real, you've just blown open the case. That night, in her dim apartment lit only by a desk lamp, Bella dug into the tablet's encrypted files. Her old Harvard login still worked, an irony that made her smile faintly. One by one, the messages appeared: Denham coordinating with the firm, scheduling payouts, even suggesting which witnesses to silence. Her heart pounded. This was it. Then, without warning, the screen flickered. A red message blinked across the display. Remote wipe in progress. Bella froze. Someone new. She yanked the tablet offline, but half the data vanished before her eyes. Still, she whispered into the silence, I've seen enough. And for the first time, she knew truth had allies in the unlikeliest of places. The knock came just after midnight. Bella froze. She hadn't been expecting anyone, not at this hour, not with the kind of danger she'd stirred up. The city outside her apartment window hummed with distant sirens and the low growl of traffic along New York Avenue. Then came another sound. Not a knock this time. A boot kicking the door. The wood splintered. Bella, get back. Morrison's voice rang out from the hallway. He'd come to warn her, but he was too late. The door burst open, two men in dark jackets forcing their way in, faces hidden, movements too controlled to be random thieves. Denham's men. Morrison grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the kitchen as one of the intruders lunged. The first swing caught Morrison's shoulder. He grunted, stumbled, but didn't stop. Bella flung open the back door, leading him down the narrow service stairs and out into the alley, their footsteps echoing off damp brick. Go left, she hissed, toward the street. But Morrison hesitated, turning to shield her instead. They're after me, not you. She looked him dead in the eye. They're after the truth. Now move. They ran through the rain-soaked alley, cutting across empty lots until the glowing cross of a Harlem church came into view. The doors were unlocked, old habit for late-night prayers. They slipped inside, breathless, collapsing into the last pew beneath the flicker of a single bulb. For a long while, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain. Finally, Morrison whispered, I don't believe in justice anymore. Bella's voice was soft but certain. Justice isn't a system. It's a choice we make. He looked at her. This woman who'd lost everything yet still stood taller than most men he knew. By dawn, the first light spilled through stained glass. Bella typed quietly on her laptop, sending the FBI the fragments of data she'd salvaged from the tablet. When she closed the lid, Morrison was watching her. From that moment on, they were no longer employer and maid. They were allies, bound not by circumstance, but by purpose. The courthouse buzzed like a hornet's nest that morning. News vans lined the steps of D.C. Superior Court, their antennas stabbing at a sky heavy with tension. Inside, every seat was filled. Reporters, law students, strangers who'd come just to see if the rumors were true. And they were. Bella Jackson walked into the courtroom in a plain gray suit borrowed from a church friend, her hair pulled back, her badge clipped to her chest. No makeup, no polish, just purpose. When Judge Palmer entered, he glanced from Morrison to Bella. Mr. Morrison, you're certain about this? Morrison nodded. I trust her. The judge hesitated, then sighed. Very well. Miss Jackson, you may proceed as acting counsel. Gasps rippled through the room. Bella rose, papers in hand, her voice steady. The defense calls David Connolly, senior accountant for Denham Energy Holdings. The man swaggered to the stand, smug in his tailored suit. But that confidence cracked fast under Bella's questions. You testified these wire transfers were authorized by Mr. Morrison, correct? Yes. She held up a printout. Then can you explain why this transfer, dated March 12th, lists a timestamp from a computer in Denham's office, not Morrison's? Connolly stammered. I don't know. And this second transaction, she pressed. Signed at 11:43 p.m., when Mr. Morrison was already in FBI custody? The gallery murmured. Bella took one step closer to the jury box. Justice doesn't wear silk robes or polished shoes, she said quietly. It wears courage. The room fell dead silent. Even Judge Palmer's pen stopped mid-note. Then chaos. The courtroom doors swung open, and two FBI agents strode in, handing the judge a sealed folder. He scanned the pages, face paling. Your Honor, one agent said, we've confirmed direct payment from Charles Denham to Strickland and Avery, and evidence of document tampering. Reporters erupted. Denham's name flashed across phone screens before the gavel could restore order. Judge Palmer struck the bench hard. This court will recess immediately. But it was too late. The truth had been spoken, and nothing in that courtroom would ever sound the same again. The verdict came just before noon. Judge Palmer's voice echoed through the hushed courtroom. In light of new evidence and the prosecution's motion to dismiss all charges, this court finds the defendant, William Morrison, not guilty. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room erupted. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and somewhere in the chaos, Morrison turned toward Bella, his face a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Outside, the headlines were already spreading. The maid who saved a millionaire. Microphones followed them down the courthouse steps, but Morrison raised a hand to silence the noise. You didn't just save my life, he told Bella softly. You saved my belief in people. Bella smiled faintly. I didn't do it alone. Truth always fights its way to the surface. Weeks later, the winter light of Washington shone through the tall windows of a new office. Modest, bright, filled with promise. On the door, Jackson Justice Foundation. A framed check hung beside it. $5 million from Morrison's foundation, dedicated to defending the wrongly accused. When Bella opened the morning mail, she found a letter with the seal of the D.C. Bar Association. Her name gleamed in bold, reinstated. She stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "We made it." That afternoon, she walked beside Morrison into the courthouse once more, this time not as maid and master, but as equals, partners in purpose. The marble floor she used to polish now reflected her own footsteps, and as the doors swung open, the narrator's voice lingered. Bella Jackson's story reminds us that justice isn't measured by status or wealth, but by the courage to stand when silence is safer. She was called a maid, but history will remember her as a defender of truth. If you believe that courage can rise from the most unexpected places, hit like, subscribe, and share this story. Let Bella Jackson's fight remind the world that doing what's right is never out of reach. Thank you.